What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast, where we're here to help you win from within. And we are going to talk about some pretty important ideas when it comes to that. We're definitely going to breach some subjects when it comes to vulnerability. We're talking about a cool book you'll hear about called The Purpose Pivot. And there's so many lessons in this. I want people to really stop, give yourself this gift and listen to what our guest has to say, because I don't want you to wait until it's too late. And ultimately, I find that happens often is people are waiting too late, or they have that massive wake-up call before they stop, pause, and really take an intake of what they wanted out of life. So I want to welcome our guest, Melissa Gonzalez, who is an entrepreneur and visionary who bridges creativity with strategic problem solving, from experiential design and brand strategy to sales analysis and career guidance. A mentor and advocate for women in leadership, she is the author of The Purpose Pivot, which introduces a bold, human-centered framework for leading in today's rapidly evolving business world. Well, Melissa, it's so good to have you on. And I have to say, your hair is looking spot on. Guys, she thought, we're doing no, it looks actually on point. So great to see you. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you so much. Yes, I had the Frizz Combat Teen ready in my mist and hairspray. So thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. Well, so The Purpose Pivot, I'm just going to get into it because the book's right behind you. This is, You said the advanced, which is awesome, the advanced copy. Why The Purpose Pivot? Where were you like, yes, I have to write this book. I need to share it with the world. What was it that inspired you that said, you know what, I absolutely need to get this out?
Sure, that's it. Yes. So I'm a second-time author. My first one is called The Pop-Up Paradigm, and that was very much, my last pivot, although the book wasn't called that, where I pivoted from working on Wall Street to being an entrepreneur. And at the time, somebody said to me, well, if you want to be known as an expert, you need to write a book. So that's what I did. But after that book, I always knew I wanted to write a second book, but I wasn't sure what that was going to be. Like I didn't find the thing that motivated me enough to sit and write down 50,000 plus words. And so I thought I actually had a concept in early 24, but instead life stepped in. And so the inspiration of this book, The Purpose Pivot, is inspired by a medical emergency I had in January 2024, which made me stop in my tracks for a period of time, have open dialogue, conversations with numerous people in my life. At the time, it was primarily women, but to be honest, since I've talked about the book, more men are talking to me about this topic. So that'll be book 2, maybe. But it's really about understanding, the importance that well-being should not be a side project in your life, and the importance that it should have an equal weighting at a minimum along your career journey and leadership path. And so that's what this is about. It doesn't mean you're going to pivot your whole life and completely change it, but perhaps at least your point of view and how you approach, and really understanding your purpose and how that kind of informs how you prioritize your time, your relationships, and your achievements.
Yeah, I mean, we only have one life to live, at least in this body. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I haven't read the book, but the idea of, look, your wellness will not wait. In fact, your health is 100% your wealth. And without it, none of this other stuff really matters. Was that the realization? I mean, I'm glad you're out of the hospital and you appear to be very healthy and doing great, which is awesome. But I can't tell you how many executives, entrepreneurs, people listening to this podcast right now that need to hear what you just said, because they're not prioritizing, to use another P, by the way, which don't let me forget. You have something with P's, I noticed. But
I know that was not planned.
See, it wasn't even planned. P's are just stuff. But yeah, there's people listening right now that I want this to sink in. I don't want them to have the emergency visit. I don't want them to realize it's too late, lost relationships, all the things that we unfortunately, and I'm sure you've encountered as you wrote the book. What can we say to shake people and wake them up? Tell me, maybe if you're willing to divulge, what was it for you that was like, Wake up, Melissa. It is time for you to know that there's so much more than just the career or the aspirations or goals.
Sure. And I would say the addition to what you said is the bigger realization was, and my book is not just my story. I interviewed, 3 dozen women who shared their stories and their learning, and unanimously, I mean, if you're a driven person, you're not going to not be like, you can't like suck that out of your soul, but there's a healthier way to go about it. And more times than not, you're going to be more successful because it's going to force you to make better decisions, to be able to differentiate between busyness and impact, you know? And I think we get caught in that hamster wheel of thinking I'm productive if I'm busy, versus I'm productive if I'm impactful. And sometimes you could spend a fraction of your day versus what you would have in the past and still accomplish more, right? But you do that when you have a better filter. So for me, I started talking about not feeling myself at the end of 2022. And I was at a retreat, and I read about this retreat. It's a women's summit that I went to. And then I started speaking to a holistic nutritionist. Her name is Mona Sharma. After that, in early 23, saying, look, I just want to talk to you. I know I'm not myself. Like, it's a sluggishness I've never had before, like almost little apathy of like what I'm doing. And do I need to see a career coach, or do I need to like focus on my health? I also, had Raynaud's my whole life, but the flare-ups were happening so much more frequently, like my hands and my feet, but also now my lips were turning blue. And it was becoming painful. And we did all these tests to see if it was primary Raynaud's or not, but stress does drive a lot of that to happen more often. And then I had my first small kind of breakout of shingles after a trip. And I said, okay, like my immune system's not operating the way it should, or something's up. And so I did test, but I didn't really follow the one piece of advice that she really gave me, which was you need to go get a full panel blood work. And the thing is, like when you go to try to do those aren't offered by insurance. It's not the kinds of tests that you normally get at the doctor. At a minimum, it's going to cost you like $1,000. And it's so easy to pause and be like, okay. But you know what? Like that $1,000 is much more worth it than not knowing what's going on, right? And so I finally did the test post-surgery. But the thing that really stopped me, and I think it was, as a mom, is when I woke up. So I wrote down on a Post-it note in December of 23. So a year after I first started talking about it, that I was going to do this Better You challenge with my family. And we all were going to do it. We had done it 2 years ago, and it was going to run from January 10th to the 30th. And mine was going to be about better gut health. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but that was going to be what I focus on. I thought maybe I'll do a cleanse. Fast forward to January 10th, the date I wrote down on that piece of paper in December, that is the night that is when I got woken up in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. in excruciating pain. And I ended up hours later in the emergency room, and hours later telling me like, we recommend you go into surgery before you go into septic shock. And so those are those moments that stop you. At the time, I totally forgot about that Post-it note. It wasn't until I like finally got back to, home, and I found the note, and I was like, oh my God. Like I knew I had been talking about it, but I didn't realize how on the nose the date was too. And when those things happen in life, I feel like you can't ignore. Like that was a sign of an opportunity, right? And but in that moment, I will still be, a driven, busy person probably, but in a healthier way, because what stopped me is that moment of, what are they going to open and find out? Are they going to tell me, right? I didn't know really what my diagnosis fully was. Are they going to open me and tell me I have 3 months? Because my first thought is like, is there what's causing this, right? And I have a daughter. Like I know I'm not going to be around for her whole life, but I'm going to try to be around as long as I can. And you start thinking of all the things you might miss, and it's really heavy. And so that was my first moment of like, I can't ignore that everything that could have gone right, being across the country on a business trip away from my family in the middle of the night, the right surgeon was in the ER, diagnosed it correctly, like everything that could go right went right. But I have an opportunity to learn from this. And that was the approach that I took.
Well, I have to tell you, just because for me, that blood panel that you're talking about, I want to say because I did the MTHFR test alongside of the blood panel. So I want to say it was probably $1,500. When I say it's the greatest investment you can give yourself because don't be afraid of what you're going to see. And I will say,
Yeah.
Melissa, obviously, septic shock, before you go into septic shock, I mean, that's serious. For me, it was your kidneys aren't functioning the way they are
Yeah.
supposed to. Hence, why you continue to gain weight no matter how healthy you are. And my point, guys, fast forward 4 months later from literally doing this test with my holistic
Mm.
doctor, I lost 45 pounds. It's not a weight
Wow.
loss program. And
Right.
my energy is extreme. It's like I feel back like I'm 20, 21, just so much energy. And I guess I understand what I heard is, what am I going to see? What are they going to
Mm.
show me? And this whole show is not going to be about this, but I think it's significant that you knew you weren't feeling great for almost a year, didn't do the blood panel. And I think there's so many people that can relate to exactly what you just said. And I just want to
Hmm.
implore you guys to say, don't be afraid. I
Yeah.
promise you that you want to know because you can make it better and it can happen in a very quick amount of time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the gut and the brain are linked, whether you like that or
Yeah.
not, guys. They are 100% linked. So cool. So I mean, not cool. So you have this
But
hospital
yeah.
visit, and then what? Now it's like, okay, the wake up bell has rung. I am fully alive, and you're already crushing it. But now, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so after that, I just started kind of writing down my thoughts. I couldn't go home for a couple weeks. I was in the hospital for a week, and then I had to stay. They didn't want me to have blood clots, and I had to get my staples removed and all this stuff. So I had some time alone. Alone as in I wasn't with my daughter and stuff, but like friends would visit. So I had time, and also my doctor was like, "You want to properly heal. This is a 3 month. You're going to have to learn to be patient and get through that." And so I think, first of all, you feel all that like fight or flight energy just seep out of your body slowly over time because you're so used to being on the go. And I think I need it was an outlet for me to have like rechannel that energy. And I started writing down all the thoughts I had. But the other thing was, 2.5 weeks later, like when I finally was on the plane heading home, I posted on my Instagram, hey guys, I always talk about like my awards and this and that. My year started differently, and I'm sharing this with you. And so many people said, I'm glad you're okay. But I had so many messages I didn't expect of people then sharing their story with me. And, I'm not the first person in the world to share, but who knows what resonates to make somebody else share, right? And that was the part that stood out to me more. Like, hey, Melissa, that time I said I couldn't go out, um, I was diagnosed with cancer, or I had a stroke, or I had adrenal failure, or I mean, it was all these stories that I hadn't heard of before from them. And mostly they hadn't told many outside their family because they don't want other people to know because they don't want them to equate their condition with weakness.
Mm.
And I was like, we said we weren't going to have any profanity, but this is effed up. Okay. Because we should not feel that way. First of all, that's when you need people around you to support you the most. If you're in the right organization, if you have the right teams, if you have the right friends, community, they will support you in those moments, not see you as a liability or a weakness. And it's part of life. So my thought was, this is not just my story. It's all the women. And for this book, I chose women just because I wanted diversity in profession and all this other stuff. So I wanted a little bit of a through line. Book 2 will be men. But the stories show most times there were signs. Most times they didn't handle it until they hit a wall or they were forced to. But on the other side of it, they realize that actually wasn't weakness. I learned so much from it. And they have better practices in what they put forward. And through the book and through them sharing too, they're also helping others because it's the human side and that relatability and other people seeing, I can learn from your experience. Do you have advice? And when I interviewed people, it's a big responsibility to tell somebody's story back, especially many who were telling it for the first time. And so many wrote me back or sent me audio messages. So it was such a powerful thing to read their own story back, but it's so empowering for them too because they're like, now I can help other people feel seen because in this moment I feel seen.
Yeah, I'm picturing as you're reaching out, or not first just posting publicly. And was it women primarily that had reached out to say, gosh, thank you so much. This is, and we're willing to be vulnerable. And I'm asking because what I find fascinating is you interviewed, I think you said 36 women, but you have a lot of now reception from men saying, hey, if I can raise my hand too and say, I'm not doing okay. I'm
Hmm.
willing to share that my life is a little effed up right now, that
Hmm.
I'm not operating at my highest level because, and I wrote about it in my first book, Vulnerability is the first chapter of my book, because it was the most profound thing I learned. And so my question, I guess, is that where you said, you know what, I'm going to focus on females here because they're willing to be open, write the book, and now you're starting to see men start to open up? Is that kind of what the journeys look like? And guys, I want you to hear this, men specifically. I want you to be open to saying, I'm not okay. It's okay. It's not a weakness. You're a human being. We all have challenges, but I'm just
Hmm.
curious. Was that how the process went? And I love that you're going to write about men as well, but it's a human thing, right? This is not a male
It's a human
female
thing.
thing. This is a human thing.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. There's one chapter that kind of leans a little bit into women just because the hormonal side, I think it's just one chapter. So it's not a full, thorough look through that. But that is, yes. So on Instagram, which tends to be a little bit more personal, a mix of personal business and what I'd put out there, it was more women that responded with their story. It was, maybe one man who told a story to me, but I had already known his story a bit and he just shared more and checked in. So that was Instagram. A couple weeks ago, I finally shared the books coming out in more detail on my LinkedIn. And that's when I started getting the male stories. So it was
Mm.
interesting how the two platforms engage differently, but very successful men, C-suite and or retired successful, that messages like this resonates more than you understand. I know this too well, things like that. And so that's why I think it's important. I think, women, I think, know how to be vulnerable and in a different way than men. But I think unanimously, I think people are starting to recognize that it's okay to do that. So we'll see what those interviews look like in the future. But I do think it's something that all humans, as you said, I hope that one or two stories in the book resonates where you can feel some relatability. And the back of the book is all actionable worksheets kind of tied to the lessons that the women that I interviewed shared. So you could take that first step of how you're going to create change for yourself.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, look, opening the door to say, because I think it's a generation thing, right? If I look at my parents,
Sure.
and I certainly look at my grandparents, you don't talk about this stuff. You go ahead and sweep it under the rug. You act as if none of this has happened, and you put on a smile and you go to work.
Hmm.
Okay, that was one way to go about it, and you know what? It served them. Who am I to judge? It served them to a degree. And guys, there's some challenges with that. There's some severe challenges that came from that. We were talking last night at dinner. When you look at our parents' generation or the generation before, 40, 50, 60, that was old. Like
Yeah.
you could see it. It was physically and mentally, they were just kind of drained. And I feel like, and maybe you can let me know if what you're seeing. I feel like we're shifting that paradigm, which again,
Hmm.
not to borrow from your first book, but I feel like we are shifting that a little bit to say, yeah, you know what, that was a way to go about it, but it can be better. In this
Yeah.
holistic approach, again, not to holistic doctors are necessary, but this is a holistic approach, right? Like, for us to live our best lives, we are going to need to address the mental side, the physical
Yes.
side, the gut side, which is, I guess, physical as well. But is that kind of what you've seen as well? Is it a generation thing that we're finally saying, all right, enough of that stuff. That was good for you. And again, no judgment, but it's a different time now. We have to operate at a higher level.
Yes, I think that there's just more access to information, and a lot more studies and a lot more of sharing of that information. And yes, the gut is physical, but your mental wellness does impact your gut because when you're under duress and negative stress and it's repeatedly like that, what your body is releasing, right? Cortisol levels, hormones, all of that impacts your gut too. So it's all interconnected. And I think people just didn't have the same awareness around that. PacSun, which you might be familiar with that brand, actually was just on a free end last night. And they put out a youth report that they did with global data, interviewing thousands of Gen Alpha and Gen Z. And that generation, one of the most important things for them is mental well-being when they think about health as a whole. And so they're influencers in the home, and they're influencers to boomers and boom X and all of that too. So I think it's also the cross education and awareness of it that'll create change as well.
There's another thing that happened with you being in the hospital, or at least, that I'm seeing. You slowed down. No choice. Look, you're across the
Mhm.
country or you're away from home for 3 weeks. That sucks. But you are literally 3 weeks of downtime. And what I'm hearing is, I mean, this is a pretty massive move for you, this book. And not that the first book wasn't awesome, but I feel like the purpose pivot, that's a huge word. Purpose is a big word. I feel like there's an element of slowing down to speed up. Are you
Mhm.
seeing that with some of your clients that you're working with? Because I will say for me, 100%, the reason I wrote my first book, I've talked about it. I was at a silent 3 day meditation with nothing but a gallon of water and a tent and nothing else, like no food, 3 days of just me.
That's
And that
hard.
it's hard and it's remarkable. And it shifted my entire life, right?
Yeah.
Uh, this 3 weeks in the hospital, it's like, gosh, Melissa, that's awful. I'm so sorry that happened. And yet I'm guessing to a degree, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe, whatever you believe in. Thank you for giving me this gift of time so that I can have clarity on what I really want to pursue. Not that my life before wasn't great, but
Right.
gosh, now I'm pursuing my calling, my purpose, what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I reaching by going there, or what were your thoughts on that 3 week stay in the hospital?
Yeah. So between that and the months, I probably went into the office once over that 3-month period, but really just very much at home. So as a whole, over that time period, um, yes, I knew that I wasn't myself. I knew I wanted to write another book. I didn't have enough passion again, behind some of the ideas I had to write it until this moment. And that is why, I mean, I don't see myself as wallowing in what happened. I see myself as I see an opportunity in what happened, and I don't want to ignore the opportunity, especially for something to be that on the nose, like I said, to write the date down as like I put it out in the universe and it happened. So for me, I felt like, well, to do nothing with that feels like I'm missing the message here. And so, yeah, and that downtime and you're thinking and you have the different resonance on moments, I've read so much about gut health. I'm just not an expert, but it took me down these paths of reading so many articles of understanding the microbiome and how this all functions and what I could be eating and not eating. And, am I feeding my daughter the right things? And so you just become a little more educated in that too. And I feel now I'm still busy, right? I still, but I've said no to some trips this quarter, knowing like the book's launching and there's going to be a book tour. And I'm like, other people on my team could travel. Other people can go to those conferences. And what can I delegate? And, you know, one of the exercises in the book is, there's two columns in the first part of the exercise, what energizes you and what depletes you. And I feel like I'm more cognizant of that in myself too, because then you ask yourself, like, okay, if it energizes me, great. You can still gut check, when this is out of obligation or desire, because when sometimes you still should delegate it. And other times when it depletes you, it's like, is this even my superpower? Is this even the highest like thing that I can contribute to the team? Or is there somebody else that should be taking that on or stepping into that? Or it makes them really excited. And so those are some of the things that I think I started to recognize. And of course, wanting to, how do I carve out space that I don't feel guilty? Like in the past that you feel guilty, I think, a lot of the times as a working parent. I can't coach or I can't make that game because I'm going to miss the meeting. Versus I can't miss their game. So I'm going to have to, you know what I mean? It's just like thinking that through, and you're still going to be responsible, but okay, maybe somebody else could take that meeting, right? It doesn't always have to be me. And so it's those kinds of things I think that I started to kind of rethink a bit. And I have the moments now where I might come home and I think I have to get all these things done, and my daughter's wanting me and my dog's wanting me. And I remember an example couple of weeks ago where I literally said to myself, the project's going to be okay. It's really not going to be different if you stay up another night till midnight. But what's going to be different is if you receive their energy. And their hugs felt so good. And I slept like a baby. And the meeting still happened the next day, you know? And so I wouldn't have done that before, I don't think. And it's those little gut checks that I feel like I have more with myself now, is as a result of that time that I had to be more present and kind of just take stock of things a bit.
I'm curious, as you've had these gut check moments as if people knew Melissa pre-hospitalization, pre this book, hard charging, I'll be there no matter what, burning both candles, candles on both ends, and just, it feels like what I'm hearing is I'm going to be there no matter what, man. We're going to drive and drive, and we're going to win. And I'm talking from a personal account. Maybe I should do it that way, where there's going to be some sacrifices, and you know what? It'll be okay. And it is okay. But my question is, as you shifted some of your identity, which is what I'm really hearing, how has that been received, both in your professional world, in your family? Because I think often this is where people are like, well, I can't do that because this is how I'm known. This is who I am. This is my badge of honor that I've created. And unless it's something literally, death knocks on my door, that's usually when I see people make these shifts and changes. How has it been for you, as you've said, you know what? That's not a hell yes for me. So I'm going to say no. That's my rule. It's a hell yes or it's a hell no. And there's no in between. Like, those are the boundaries I had to set up. But I wasn't always that way. And it took time for people around me to kind of be okay with that. How has that experience gone for you?
I think people have been pretty supportive. My organization, I was very honest at the end of last year. I signed a book deal and this is what I'm doing. And, their first reaction is like, that's amazing, and so I think, and that's why I say, it's important for you to trust that if you're around the right people, if you're around the right community, if you are in the right organization, they will kind of see the opportunity in these things alongside of you. But it's sometimes been harder for myself. Like, I've had to be vocal for sure and say, well, I'm glad you're excited for me, but this is what this is going to mean. Like, I'm going to have a book tour and I'm not going to be as, present in these moments. And this is where I'm going to need support, and having the confidence to be able to ask that. But I think you only get to a point of confidence to ask that, not just in yourself, but in the relationships you cultivated leading up to that moment, so that you can have those honest conversations and feel like it's a safe space. So it is a little bit of that effort too. And I think for me, it's also, reminding myself, to your point, where you have the FOMO, you don't want to not be in that meeting, or think people are now invited to stuff that you're not invited to. And I have to remind myself, no, I opted out of that. I opted out of that because I'm doing this. And so it's important to know that, I think, because it's not like you flip a switch and everything changes and you just flow with that. You have to be grounded in what that direction is, why it's important, and it's okay. And it's natural and normal to feel a little of that, like it is going to happen if you're a human being. With any sort of empathy, like, you're going to feel those voids of like, oh, I'm not in those things, but that's okay. You're in something else, and they get to be in those things.
How has that shown up in your work? Has it shifted what you're doing on a day-to-day, and good or bad? And I ask that because, again, people resist change because it's new, it's unknown, it's foreign. Some of these things that we're talking about, they're like, I can just see clients. I've seen it, right? You introduce this idea, the purpose pivot, They read the book, get inspired, and then they say, but you don't understand my situation. That's not where I'm at. I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that because, the stories and go on and on. For you, when you look at, I don't know what this would be called post the book coming out, the tour, all of that, how has that shown up in your work? Has it helped like ramp up? I'm just curious what that experience has been because when you put something out on paper the way you have it with a couple books, it shifts things, right? It can help. Most often it helps, but I'm curious what that's looked like in your professional life.
Yeah, so, I think so I left Wall Street. I started an organization called the Line S Group. We were acquired. Then I became a shareholder and principal of the company that acquired us, and then we got acquired again at the end of last year. So it's a lot of newness for me at once because I'm part of this organization with a lot of new people to my life. But I was honest to that with them at the deal closing, that I had this coming up. And I think for me, so it's like shift on top of shift because that big change was already happening through the acquisition and the timing of this too. And so, you know, learning how to like not be as in the work. Leading up to this, I had already been reading a lot of books for my own self and my own growth, like as a founder, being acquired, and there's a lot of shifts that are required already in the way you think, you know? And so as I grow in my career, like what does it mean to do versus to mentor versus, to do versus be the coach in the room? And the more I could pivot to those things of, making sure I have the right teams. I think I did a lot of study of like, where am I supplementing where I'm strong and where I'm not? Or, where can I become more the coach and the mentor? How do you can only do that effectively if you have the right team to get to the point where you're more the reviewer, right? And the mentor than in doing it. And then also gut checking am I stepping in because I can't let go, because I can't trust? Am I making these decisions out of fear? Things like that. And so many books I feel like I've read that have helped me with those little voices to say, nope, that's one of those moments. So it's been that, right? Like taking down my utilization in the work down significantly and making it more intentional and working with my project managers to say, here's what I need you to help me get to. Like I need to be in the room when we're going to review X, Y, and Z. Can you work with the team to get to those moments? And so it's those kinds of steps I think that I've had to take. And then, I think the organization leadership really also support the message of the book. And a lot of them, at least from the firm that I was with pre-acquisition, our HQ is in Seattle, which is where I was hospitalized. So one of them is the one who took me to the hospital in the middle of the night. Others visited, like very well aware of it. Our CEO made an announcement at our firm-wide meeting last Friday, telling everybody about the book, telling everybody how supportive they are of it, and I think not that this is ever a reason why, but organically you realize how human the conversation is. So a lot of them recognize that it's also a positive message for our firm. And so they're going to be in the room with some of our counterparts that we've had relationships with from a work standpoint. And it's allowing them to open up a more human connection with those clients as well.
As you're talking, I'm thinking, my goodness, it's been a tremendous amount of growth. And what I mean by that, being acquired, that's a massive shift. I mean, you want to talk about egos having to sometimes be put, like checking the ego, because now it's not just my baby and I am playing a different role than I was before. And, to do it again and to be comfortable with delegation, empowering. I'm curious for you when you really hit these, because when we grow, it's uncomfortable a lot of times. It's like, that's
Yeah.
new. That's kind of scary. Do you have a process where you're like, okay, the ego's calling me and now I want to be able to check that at the door? I'm curious for you what that looks like. If you have something, maybe it's in the book, but how you do this growth, because this is where I think sometimes people are like, yeah, that's scary. I don't really want to do that. I'm really comfortable with what I'm doing now. You went through a significant amount of growth in a very short period of time. uh, what do you have a process that really helps you when that ego comes a calling, or when that's uncomfortable and you're like, but I really like the safe space over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember I read this once and it's the easiest tip that I do try to do because I think when you're a go person, you're fast paced, like I'm fast paced, you want to answer right away, right? And so don't. That's my biggest tip. Like when you feel that creep up and you think like count to 10 at a minimum before you respond because you're not allowing the full processing to happen. You're just like having reaction. And so my initial reaction would be dive in, do this, comment on that, all these things. And sometimes that's required. But many times taking that pause is going to allow you to be so much more thoughtful and impactful when you do end up responding. And there's times I'm in a meeting and I'll say, let me take this away. I'll get back to you guys in a few. And that's okay. Because then when you get back to them, you're much more thoughtful. And so instead of solving it, which I would dive in, okay, I'll stay up tonight and work on this, or I'll come in early and like get this together and then we can meet. I'll say to myself instead, what do I think's missing? Or what are the prompts I could give the team? So they could still do it, right? I'm still providing value because I think at least at the spirit of it, that's what you want to do. Like, I don't know if it's really you want to be in all the doing as much as you want to be part of the impact. And so just understanding that there's another way to get to that in a way that also empowers your team. But it's the pause, I think, that's like just an easy, maybe it's not easy, but it's something you can add into your routine. At a minimum, count to 10 and know it's okay to say, let me take this away and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's called the power of pause, which by the way, I am not great at. I have had to learn because like Melissa said, I have the answer. Let me just spit it out. Well, maybe you take it home and just sleep on it. Take some
Yeah.
time. Go on a walk. Go meditate. Go do something. And guess what? Your answer is often much, much better than let me just go ahead and answer it right now. I'm curious for you. If you look back at 12-year-old Melissa, 8-year-old
Mhm.
Melissa, and you go, you know what? I'm going to be this powerful businesswoman that sold, her company or has been acquired several times, written these incredible books are impacting people. Was that the path? And you just knew, like, yeah, this is kind of, I'm a big deal. I knew I was going to be a big deal as a kid. What did that look like for you? Has it been a shocking journey as you came along and said, well, college is going pretty good. So now when you look back and you think, yeah, this is how my life was meant to be designed, or holy shit, I did some cool stuff.
I don't know if we're always good as individuals saying like, holy shit, I've done some cool stuff. But that is something else I write in the book too, like celebrate the wins, the small wins, the little wins along the way to the big win, all of those things. So I'm getting better at saying that to myself, like, wow, you achieved, and I think that's why it's important that you surround yourself with the right people because sometimes other people being your cheerleader helps you remember. Um, but no, I had no inclination in my mind that I would write any books when I was 8. So the two things that I wanted when I was younger, and I joke about this. First, I was like, I think it was 1986 when the Mets won. It's probably like the last time the Mets won. And my dad was a big fan and everything. Anyway, so I was like, oh, I'm going to be the first female professional baseball player. I was not good enough to even like be in the semi pros, so that wasn't going to happen. But then it was I wanted to be an actress, and I would do plays in the living room and all of these things. And over time, it's a hard profession, right? You could have a great audition, and so my mom, when I was in college, my senior year was like, just interview and see what jobs you get, and in finance, and so I went for it. But I think what what is a through line from wanting to be an actress is being a storyteller and and impacting people. I think that's what when I thought about being an actress was. It wasn't about being famous per se. It was like that power of storytelling, that power of like that impact you have on the audience, and whether you make them laugh, or you make them cry, or you make them understand a story. And so think that's the through line of what I bring through into the work, both in my organization, when I work with designers and our strategists. It's like, what is the story? What's the narrative? What are we creating? What are we evoking? And then through writing, obviously that storytelling too, and impact and lessons and opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, clearly you're feeding that creative side. It's a huge part of what you're doing, and it's really cool. What didn't I know enough to ask you as we're going through this interview? I'm sure you're like, dude, come on, man. Like, you're not going to ask this? You're missing the boat here, bud. What is it that I should know enough to ask you that, whether it's about the book, about your career journey, something that you're like, you want to make sure the audience really gets to hear that I just didn't know enough to ask?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, you know, I think maybe asking questions about the other, I mean, some of the exercises maybe that are in the book, I could just tease out a teeny bit. We talked about the delegation exercise. There's also the awe intervention moments exercise that I think I wasn't so aware that I have those for myself and the impact they have in me. And one of the women I interview in the book, her name is Jennifer Walsh. We became friends through another friend like so many years ago. And when I went through this, she messaged me when she saw my surgeon. She's like, I never told you before, but this is what happened to me. And she's a few years older than me, so it happened closer to when it happened to me. And she's like, and my nickname is semicolon because of it, because she had half her colon removed and I had mine. And anyway, as we
Sorry.
got to talk, as we got to talking, she's sold her company too. She's a beauty founder, really forward thinking, and she's really studied neuroscience and biophilia and the beauty of nature and its impact on individuals and mental wellness. And so, through my interview with her and her learnings, we put together this worksheet, and it's about finding your awe intervention moments. And so, when you think about the pause throughout our day, it's important to take those things. They nourish us, right? We are so on that hamster wheel of taking in information. But our bodies, like our minds, aren't meant to just be like a storage case of that. We're also supposed to create ideas and have outward flow. And when we have the pauses, that's a lot of the times where that comes free flowing. You ever have that, when you finally stop and you're like, I don't know, exercising, whatever, and all these ideas hit you? So we put that exercise together in the book, and there's different ways you can find awe. You can find it in nature. You can find it through travel. You can find it through different kinds of new experiences. So I think that's a good exercise to take. And you don't need always an hour, because I think a lot of the times we think we can't make space for these things because I don't have the time.
Mm.
If you have 5 minutes, and that's kind of what this cheat sheet helps you realize, that you can find it throughout the day. Like I could literally just pause in my office for 5 minutes, maybe not talk to anybody, and stare out the window at the Empire State Building. And that's my awe intervention, right, for that afternoon. So that's one of the things too that, we didn't talk about, but I think a lot of people can embrace.
I love that idea. And I guess for me, it's interesting that when I'm trying to search, if I'm sitting here at my desk and I'm trying to find the answer, it is eluding me like, I don't know, trying to chase a rabbit, like me trying to catch a rabbit.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I'm like Rocky. I can't catch the damn chicken. It's like so fast. But when I just go out there, like you said, looking out the window, for whatever reason, water, when I'm in the shower, it's like, holy downloads. Like, I think
Hmm.
this is I think that's what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is, don't search for the answer. It'll come if you just, awe intervention. I guess I hadn't heard that terminology prior, but is that kind of what you're experiencing as
Yeah.
well?
Because in that moment, you have an extreme presence that happens, right? Right. A lot of people, I think, a shower, we want to be mindful of how much water we waste. But yes, I love the shower too, and it just comes, you have the white noise and you just become present. And I think that's what awe gives you, is that extreme sense of presence. You had it probably in that 3-day retreat to an extreme level where you couldn't talk and it, right. But in that, think about all the inflow that happens, and the creativity that ends up happening. And I think we could like be running against a wall for 5 hours trying to find an idea that you might find in 5 minutes. because you gave yourself that awe intervention moment that allowed that extreme presence, and those ahas come into you sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant actually, and guys, I hope everybody heard what she said. Give yourself a little gift of time. Just be, and it's amazing. You're energetic beings. Like things are going to come. That walk that is a waste of time. That's when you're going to see something that's going to go, oh, and it's there. I will say the hardest part during that 3-day retreat, we couldn't take a pen and paper either. So I literally couldn't dump what was happening. I had to just sit with
That would be
that.
stressful. I would be so stressed because I have a notepad at the side of my bed, because sometimes you'll be asleep and then you'll get this idea, and then you don't want to stay awake of it turning in your head. So I just try to write it down. I'm like, okay, it's recorded, go back to sleep. So I couldn't imagine for 3 days of that happening.
She just gave you best sleep tip ever, by the way. If you're struggling sleeping, do exactly what Melissa just said. Grab and just brain dump. You will sleep like a baby. Throw in a little sleep meditation, boom, you're out. You're awesome. I love the book. I can't wait to read it myself. If people want to connect with you, find the purpose pivot, like where's the best place to connect with you online and see everything that you're up to?
Sure. So you can go to melissagonzalez.com/books. So both books are listed there. It's available, well, as of September 30th on Barnes and Nobles. It's all in pre-order now, but Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Target, Books A Million, all those great bookstores. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm sure if you kind of search my name in the book, it should pop up. And I do have a podcast alongside the book where you get to know some of the contributors to the book a little bit more.
Cool.
And they're just conversations, a little of who they are, some of their learnings. You have to read the full book to hear the full story as it pertains to the Purpose Pivot. And then on Instagram at Purpose Pivot with Melissa.
Amazing. I love that idea, by the way, that podcast to tie that in. That is awesome. Well, thank you. This was fun. I love the second book. The P's, for whatever reason, just come to you creatively. I guess that's just you, but you're awesome.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate you showing up the way you did.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the conversation.
Well, as she talked about the purpose pivot, I mean, she had that wake up call. She had that moment where, okay, I'm crushing it in business, and now, I have to be in the hospital for literally 3 weeks. And as she was telling the story, I could see so many people going through my mind. Like the Rolodex was just ripping through of you guys that are crushing it, right? In the business world, or you're crushing it, financially, and yet you're not taking care of yourself from a health perspective. You're not taking care of your relationships. And so, look, this is not a judgment. I want everyone to succeed and be happy and successful. That's all I really want. And yet I think this purpose pivot, this idea, the exercises in the book, that power of pause, give yourself that gift. You're going to show up as a better executive. You're going to show up as a better employer. And it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to say, I'm struggling, and it's not a weakness. So I love the conversation. I know this is a conversation that needs to be had. It's a conversation that needs to be shared, and it's one that is powerful. So please, please make sure you share this with someone that you know is going through this exact thing. They need this wake up call before they end up in the hospital. They need this wake up call before it's too late. And the conversation was awesome, as you guys heard, but this is real, and this is really what's happening. So please do me that favor, and we'll continue to grow the show and have awesome guests like we did with Melissa today. Remember how much I really do appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. And until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you all. Talk soon.